In this Path of Exile video, I'm going to talk about the Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing Occultist and how I play this character. Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing is a transfigured version of Peacock, which was added in 3.24. This skill gem has pretty high damage as it gets a lot of flat damage from the skill gem itself and life flasks. It also has pretty high damage effectiveness since it's an ability that hits multiple times. So it has 2 bounces without any investment, and we can add additional bounces with additional projectiles. Now normally GMP and Greater Volley have a downside, but these downsides don't apply to ailments. However, adding additional projectiles comes with a slight disadvantage. Our damage becomes a little bit delayed since Peacock needs to bounce many times before it deals its full damage per attack. And while it's bouncing, enemies may move too far away. Now explosions help with disadvantage of Peacock's delayed damage, as instead of having to wait for Peacock to bounce multiple times, the explosions will deal damage and help tremendously with clear. Now the downside of playing an occultist is that we have worse Flask charge sustain than Pathfinder. The transfigured version of Peacock uses 8 charges per attack. We attack roughly 3 times per second. So it's quite difficult to sustain so many life flask charges. So Pathfinder has better single target and defense, which makes the occultist more suited for mapping. Now the flask charge sustain problem can be partially mitigated with a Harvest Flask enchant. Peacock will always consume flask charges from the flask with the highest charge count. So what you do is you use 2 life flasks and use the Harvest enchant on your second flask, and you only use your first flask to restore your HP. And of course that can also be done with Pathfinder as well. Another advantage of Occultist is that Occultist clears very well with Plague Bearer, as it has minus 20% chaos resistance on nearby enemies. And of course Plague Bearer will also proc Occultist explosions. Now for passive tree, I path to Eldritch Battery, which allows me to spend Energy Shield before mana. And it also enables me to use a Divine Blessing setup. So in addition, you can also pick up this large jewel socket and put a chaos damage, 8 passives, large cluster jewel with 3 notables. So I use Wicked Paw, Unholy Grace, and Unwaveringly Evil. And as a medium class jewel, I use damage over time because it's easier to roll than chaos damage over time. And for that for the 2 nodes, I want Brute for potency because it's quite easy to roll. It also gives me a little bit of flask charge gained, increased flask charge gained, and Circling Oblivion provides the most damage, as in addition to the 25% increased damage, it also gives us duration, poison duration. And for Eldritch Battery, you need enough energy shield, so you get a little bit with melding. You can also get some with your helmet and pick the energy shield mastery, 100% increased energy shield from equipped helmet. So then I'll path down here, it's pretty straightforward, and pick the chaos mastery, which I think is very good with a multi-hitting skill like Poisonous Concoction. And we also get every second inflict withered on nearby enemies for 15 seconds. And I do think that this mastery affects this ascendancy point. So then we have these nodes which provide us our life flask charges, sustain, and the Soul of Vrislava. But this one has a condition. You could also pick the life flask charge, gain 1 charge every 3 seconds as well. And here I have the evasion mastery clicked, but for this I need 4. I need my helmet, chest, gloves, and boots to have evasion. I have a Brood Restraint Jewel, which gives me Onslaught on kill and Frenzy Charge on kill. Now the reason why I go for Frenzy Charge on kill is normally you could get Frenzy Charges on kill with Blood Rage, but on this build we don't have any life regen, so Blood Rage will end up killing us, or you would have to use Enduring Cry, but I don't have any free sockets. So I find Frenzy Charge and Kill to be pretty good. Also Onslaught and Kill, so I can run Chill immunity boots. And the rest you can go for increased damage with poison. You can go for faster poison. And also has Plague Barrier has increased maximum value, because we do a lot of clearing with our Plague Barrier. So that was the passive tree for our gear. To mitigate physical damage, we use physical damage from hits taken as elemental damage. Since we are not running D-term, we don't have any armor. We have 3 sources of physical damage from hits taken as an elemental damage: the Taste of Hate, the Helmet, and Lightning Call. To reduce the elemental damage I use a Eternal Damnation. But for this you need pretty high kill stress. I've 70. We get 60% from our Ascendancy. So this is our elemental damage reduction for this build. The rest of our gear is pretty straightforward. Get suppression, resistances. I have flask charges gained, increased flask charges gained on my belt to have better life flask charges sustain. Now important, flasks are pretty important. You want the prefix increased amount recovered. Increased amount recovered and reduced recovery rate. So we get maximum. So this is, and on your second life flask you want to use the Harvest enchant to maximum charges, and this costs you 800, I think 800 red light force. And as previously mentioned, Poisonous Concoction will just then consume flask charges from the life flask that has the most charges, which will be our second life flask. So Taste of Fate for physical mitigation, and also gives us, of course, maximum cold res phasing, so I don't get stopped, get body blocked by enemies, and obviously a life flask. So for gems, I have Plague Bearer linked with increased AoE to prove our Plague Bearer clear. Now you could also use Empower instead of increased area effect. Now Despair is linked with Blasphemy support, so we can effectively make use of the Profane Bloom, Ascendancy notable. As previously mentioned, I have a Divine Blessing setup, so linked with Inspiration, and so Inspiration, Divine Blessing, and Haste. If you don't have enough energy shields to cast your Haste and to sustain, to have enough energy shield recharge to sustain using Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing, you could also click the Life Mastery, skills cost life instead of 30% of mana cost. Now I don't use GMP, I only have Greater Volley, because I find that GMP adds, like having both Greater Volley and GMP adds too much delay, since your Poisonous Concoction has to go through a lot of bounces if you use GMP as well. So I'm using Awakened Vicious Projectors instead, but using Greater Multiple Projectors would be more damage than Awakened Vicious Projectors.